under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Thomas August is absent.
Thank you. Audience participation, when you come up, please state your name, address. You'll have 5 minutes. Please address the board, and let me know comments coming from the board at this time. Ashley, Jeb? Guy. I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Ashley Guy. I live on 21547 Raymond Street. Hello, board members. You all may remember me from the last meeting where I spoke about the arts. I have come back to speak up on that same issue. At the last meeting, I recall you saying that all your decisions are made for a reason and for the benefit of the district and the students within it. I am very curious on how letting Mr. Bays go benefit anyone or anything about the district, especially considering his petition, which was made by students, got 1,614 signatures. It will be a lot of, I am concerned with this because of how many students are coming in from the elementary schools who are joining band. It will be a lot of pressure on Mr. Arnold to manage 6 through 12 band classes plus a marching band in the fall. Decisions like these put a lot of pressure on teachers. Please have some consideration for teachers like Mr. Arnold, who will be stretched too thin managing all of these classes. We should be able to enjoy the arts without them being limited or stretching teachers to the point where they may break under all the pressure. I would like an update on any decision you have made within these programs, because I am aware that there have been cuts within middle school choir and band, and I would like to be aware of any other cuts or limitations that have been made in this district, so I am aware that I have all the correct information. Thank you.
Raquel starts.
34372 Pennsylvania Street. Hello, esteemed administrators. My name is Brielle Starks, and I'm officially an 8th grader at Kennedy Middle School. I am a choir student, a performer, an inductee of the National Junior Honor Society, a straight A student, a person that has struggled with mental health, a perfectionist, a daughter, a sister, a best friend, and most importantly, a student. A student that depends on you to make the right decisions. And thus far, you have always done what's best. However, your future actions are immensely important. I myself am feeling disappointed about what has happened these past few weeks regarding the arts. I know that it has been addressed and there have been some advancements, but it still feels unresolved. You have always supported us students and our arts. You have provided us with opportunities, and I couldn't be more grateful for them. However, students' opportunities are now more limited. Now teachers will be stretched thin, limiting the growth of the arts program. Not only that, but things like honors choir and jazz band are no longer an option. I understand that it's a numbers game, that it's about the number of students enrolled in choir, the number of students enrolled in band, the number of students enrolled at Kennedy, and the number of students in the district. But each and every one of those numbers represents a student. Not only a student, but a complex person that is hundreds of things. Those numbers represent not only students, but also siblings, athletes, children, and singers. And every one of those students is unique and has their own needs. I know that you are trying to meet our needs and expectations, but I still feel that there is more that can be done. I understand that the arts issue seems like something that has been dealt with, but it is still a looming issue in my life, because the arts are my life. Not only that, but my outlet, my home, just as it is for many others. For many others who are anxiously waiting to see how this ends, and to many students hoping that what they love will be accessible to them without limitations and the fear of it continuing to be restricted. Thank you.
Item number 5, Superintendent's Report, Dr. Colonial.
Just a brief update regarding strategic planning efforts. We've met on a handful of occasions with our administrative team to dial in a little bit closer on the goals and objectives that we want to set forth for not only this upcoming school year, but for the next 5 years thereafter. And we will be presenting to the board in August a comprehensive plan in regards to what the strategic plan will look like. We also had a number of staff the day after school concluded attend threat assessment training, which is being done countywide through a company called Sigma, which has provided threat assessment not only in Macomb County but throughout the state, and actually they have a national presence as well. And so our goal there is when we return to school in the fall that this team is up and running, and from day one we have a better handle on assessing threatening statements, threatening comments, social media posts, and provide students with not only support they need to move forward, but also determining what is a transitive type of threat versus what is a substantial threat. And of course, all of that in partnership with St. Clair Shores Police Department. And then finally, just a very brief comment to the staff and faculty and everyone that has had a hand in this very challenging year, and to our students and our families. That we started talking this school year that we would measure success in terms of smiles and laughter, and as you look through social media streams that occurred throughout the year, there's no question that in a number of occasions we met that objective. But that being said, there's certainly a lot of work to be done so that when we begin the 2022-2023 school year, that we continue to advance our students forward, that we provide the very best working environment possible for our faculty, and that we meet the goals and objectives of inspiring our students, of being innovative in our approach to education and celebrating the great things that occur here at Lakeshore. And that's it.
Moving on to 6A, can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Are there any questions or concerns? Then may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Thank you. 6B, Personnel Report, Dr. Lewis.
Recommend approval of the following personnel report. AFSCME Local 1217, move to accept the termination of Lori Kolka, afternoon custodian, Lakeshore High School, effective June 13th, 2022, and move to accept the resignation of Lisa Wooten, kitchen helper at Kennedy Middle School, effective May 11th, 2022.
I have a motion.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. Bartle, supported by Mrs. DeLong. Are there any questions? I have a roll call.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
And Mrs. Munger. Aye.
Thank you. 6C, recognition of tenured teachers. Dr. Lewis.
Recommend approval of the following individuals who have acquired tenure in accordance with the State of Michigan's Teacher Tenure Act. From Masonic Heights Elementary, Courtney Knipstein. From Kennedy Middle School, Megan Bishoping. And from Lakeshore High School, Sylvia Bautista.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Munger, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Any questions? May I have a roll call?
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. Tobias.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Lewis, Dr. Lewis, do we have teachers?
Very pleased to have Ms. Bishoping here representing our tenured teachers. Congratulations, Megan.
6D, public hearing, truth and taxation. The Truth and Taxation Act requires that a notice of public hearing be circulated in a newspaper publication in connection with the statutory budgeting process. I will officially open the hearing for anybody that wants to comment. No comments. Okay, I need a motion to... Oh, no motion to accept that one? Okay. Just close the hearing. Okay. Any questions about that? This is a normal thing we do every year to let everybody know what our 22-23 budget, and with no tax increase.
Yeah, I'm getting to that next, yeah.
Okay. I'll let you do it then, Pete. 6E, 2022 tax rate request. Pete.
All right, this is the 2022 tax rate request, also known as Form L4029. The recommendation is to approve the tax rate request for the 22-23 school year. Based upon information provided by Macomb County Department of Equalization, the operating millage rate shall be 17.3227 mils on non-homestead property. That's commercial property, business property, not primary residences. The reason why that's under the 18 mil standard levy is the Headley millage rollback factor, which occurs when you uncap taxable values because of sales of property. So that's why we're at 17.3227. What that means to us is that we lose about $80,000 in operating revenue each year. However, in 2 years, we'll be going out for another vote on the 18 mils to get it back up to 18 mils. The debt mills remain at 7 mils for the year, as it's had for several years, in accordance with our cash flow analysis with Baker Tilly. So this is an annual required document that goes to the city of St. Clair Shores, our jurisdiction. So the recommendation is to approve the tax rate request for 22-23.
May I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Are there any questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias. Aye. Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Moving to 6F, approve a one-year extension to food service contract. Pete.
So this is the approval for the one-year extension of the food service contract. Move to approve a one-year extension of the food service management contract to Chartwells for 22-23 school year. MDE requires the district renew its food service contract annually. Upon approval of MDE, the board must also approve the contract. This is the third of 4 one-year renewals that are allowed by MDE, and the contract was bid out in 2019-20, so we bid out again in 2 years. It's a standard contract. It's required by MDE annually. The contract terms are all approved by MDE. The main highlight would be the 4.4% increase in management fees and administrative fees paid to Chartwells. The December Consumer Price Index was 7.7%. The June Consumer Price Index is about 9%, so that's very reasonable in light of those factors. So 4.4% is a good deal. The food service fund has performed extraordinarily well in light of the pandemic and post-pandemic, both operationally and financially. Fund balance is targeted to be about $630,000 at the end of this year, due in part to the higher federal meal reimbursement. But even the following year, it's still going to be a healthy $530,000. So we recommend the district approve the one-year extension of the food service management contract.
Thank you, Pete. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Bartle, supported by Mrs. Munger. Are there any questions or comments? Tina Morris heads that, I believe, and you and your staff did a very good job. I was going over the financials on that, and very impressive. Good job. Anybody else? May I have a roll call?
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
And Mrs. Tobias. Aye.
Thank you. 6G, final budget amendments, 2021, 2022. Pete Barsili.
Okay, so here we have the June budget amendment. So this is the second amendment of the year. We had a budget amendment in February, so let me just go through briefly the columns up on the screen there. So in green, we have the 2020-21 actual amounts audited by Plant and Moran. In pink, we have the approved budget for this year that we approved back on June 29th of 2021. The third column in blue is the first amendment from February. The fourth column in purple, which we're voting on in this segment, is the June amendment. Column 5 in orange is the adoption for the 22-23 budget. And column 6 is for informational purposes, the change between next year's budget and this year's amended budget. We're amending all 13 district budgets, but I'm only going to go through the general fund here unless you want to go through others or any board members want to go through other funds. The key that we look at from a big picture standpoint, if we go down a little bit here to excess of revenues over expenditures, back in February we had budgeted a net loss of $1.2 million. That number is increased in June to a net loss of $1.9 million, almost $2 million. So the question is, what changed? What new financial data did we get between February and June to cause that $700,000 decline in financial position? There are four main reasons. The first one being we had an MISD audit of our student count where we lost 20 students, virtual learning issues. That cost us $174,000 in revenue. We also had increase in our substitute costs between February and June for direct subs, EduStaff, and even teacher prep hours working on their hours for subs. And then we had some employee tuition reimbursements that increased during that time period. The elephant in the room, though, was the maintenance and operations expenses that increased $490,000 between February and June due to a two-pronged effect, first being inflation that really wreaked havoc on utilities such as gas and electricity and other utilities, and also aging infrastructure, high replacement rate for boilers, HVACs, roofs, and so forth. So, and we also had some PP equipment. We had that spike in January and February of COVID, so as a reaction, we had to purchase a lot of N95 masks and PP equipment to keep us going operationally. So that all contributed to that big increase of $490,000 in maintenance and operation cost. That's the big picture. That's what gets us from the June to February amount of $700,000. Now, if we look at it from a bigger picture for the entire year, why did we lose $1.9 million? Well, that's a simpler answer, and that's because of the student count. So if you recall, last year we had a Safe Harbor Super Blend where we were shielded from 75% of our loss. This year we didn't have that, so we took the full brunt of that, plus we lost a few more kids. The net loss was 213 students this year. So if you take that times your foundation allowance, you get to $1.8 million, which is pretty much what your loss is. That's really a big picture way to look at this. The maintenance operations expenses went up $600,000 compared to last year. But we also had increase in MEPSR's reimbursement revenue, about $527,000 offset. So really, when the dust clears, it's really that student loss that caused that whole loss. So at the end of the day, when we go down further to fund balance percentage, so we're going from an 8.4 fund balance in February to a 6.4 in this amendment. Last year, we were 12.5. So obviously, this was a difficult year, but we're above the 5% early warning threshold, and we've implemented a right-sizing tool this year that will put us back in the right direction, back toward 10% where we need to be. As I'll say in my next segment, we'll likely have to borrow for a state aid note for cash flow purposes since we're at the 6.4. As I said before, once you get under 10%, you get into that territory where cash flow becomes an issue, and hopefully this will be just a one-year phenomenon. And other than that, just worth mentioning for illustrative purposes, we've lost 500 students the last 5 years. That equates to $4.3 million in annual revenue. That's quite a hit. We've lost 13.8% of our student population during that time. That's really huge for any district to take, especially for one that's a moderate size such as ours. So the right sizing is a necessity in terms of what we had to do, and that starts July 1st for next year. And you'll see next year's budget when I get into that next, that looks a little bit better. So that's all I had. If anybody has any questions.
I get a motion to approve the final amended 21-22 budget.
So moved. All right, support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Any questions? I have a roll call.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias. Aye. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Thank you. 6H, budget adoption, 2022-2023 year. Pete Basilli.
Okay, so this is column 5, this is in orange here, so I'm going to go down to the big number, or the key number here, which is a loss of $46,000, which is about basically break even. So it's much better than what we had this current year, or expected to have is 1.9, it's an improvement of 1.9 million. So that's good news. Based on 5 major budget assumptions that we've made for the current year or the next year. So we're budgeting for a $435 per student increase in the foundation allowance. That looks pretty safe based on updates I've received this week from MSBO and MDE. It looks like we'll get that or maybe a little bit more. So that's good news. That equates to about $1.3 million in more revenue. However, we have budgeted for a student count equal to our spring count of 3,076. That's 80 less than the current year blended amount. So if you take 80 times our foundation allowance, that's a decline of 700,000, but the net effect is a positive 600,000. So that eats away at that 1.9. The next positive effect, next positive assumption we're making for next year is that we'll have Section 11T ESSER 3 equalization funds to supplant some general fund expenses for the 1 year. That'll be about 640,000. That's also a positive to eat away at that 1.9 million net loss. We'll also count on improvements in maintenance and operations of about $380,000. The hope is that we won't have these massive amounts for PPE expenditures, and the bond will help with things like boiler replacements and HVACs and roofs and so forth. So that's the expectation. We'll be able to manage that better. Another big assumption, obviously, is the right sizing we're implementing as of July 1st, where we're expecting to receive about $500,000 in savings above and beyond our salary and wage increases. Net reductions in all areas, teachers, administrative, maintenance operations, everyone is taking a hit in that area. So those are the major assumptions that get us from 1.9 million of a loss to a more of a break-even standpoint. At the end of the day, fund balance still expected to be 6.9%, not a great improvement, obviously, but the hope is with the right sizing occurring and continuing on proactively that we'll be able to get back up to 10% and avoid future state aid notes. We'll also have continuing to increase salaries and wages for current employees and to attract new employees. So we have a challenge of trying to do that while right-sizing and while dealing with inflation and potentially future less MDE increases in foundation allowances. So at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. There's wild cards, obviously. Student count in October is going to be a big factor when we look at everything. The actual funding package that comes out of Lansing, we look pretty good with the foundation allowance, but special ed could increase. We might have other bonuses coming down the pike there. And obviously, inflation is going to wreak havoc, as it does with everyone else. $1 now is not going to be worth $1 6 months from now, so we're going to have to deal with that issue. The whole goal is to avoid anything mid-year disruptions and to keep things going smoothly for students and staff and the community. So that's the budget. Any questions, be welcome.
May I have a motion to adopt the 2022-2023 operation budget?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Are there any questions?
I do have a quick question. I do see for the 2022-23, there is a revenue from the international fund transfers. Do we still have a balance in that account that will,
International program?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do still have a small amount of fund balance left, yes.
okay, and so then that will be able to cover that type of transfer? Will it liquidate that account, or are we looking?
Well, the
balance in the?
You're talking about the ed fund transfers of 100, yeah, that's the 100,000 from adult ed fund and 80,000 from the cafeteria fund.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I was thinking something else. You're right, I see what you mean.
Any other questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias. Aye. Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
And Mr. Ziegler.
Aye. 6I, resolution state school aid note. Pete Vasili.
Okay, the recommended action is to approve the resolution authorizing issuance of notes in anticipation of state school aid. The resolution was prepared by True Law Firm. The purpose is to allow Lakeshore to participate in the Michigan Finance Authority State Aid Note Program for school operations for cash flow purposes. The amount of the borrowing is not to exceed $2.764 million. The actual amount of the borrowing will be determined on July 13th when the state does what is called a sizing of the note, and Matt Heiser from Trune assured me that sizing is a legal term, not something out of a Monty Python movie, so it's sizing. No proceeds will be utilized to help meet the district's payroll expenses throughout the year, most notably during August 20th to October 20th. That's when we don't get any state school aid, and that's when we're strained for payroll. The note issuance date will be August 22nd, maturity August 21st of 2023. The actual interest rate will be determined in late July. Approximately half of Michigan school districts do a state aid note, so it's not unusual. And as I said, when fund balance gets below 10%, that's when you get into that territory. But this is the best lender to go with versus doing a mid-year line of credit or anything that could be disruptive to operations. So the recommendation is to approve the resolution authorizing issuance of notes.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Sorry. That's okay.
Motion by Mrs. Mulder, supported by Mrs. DeLong. Any questions?
Just a comment. I just appreciate some of the language and explanation you provided because while it is not uncommon across the state, it has become uncommon here. And I appreciate the concept that it's hopefully a single year issue. Thank you.
Yes, and I believe one of the major reasons, besides the student count, we decided to make our wages more competitive to attract teachers, better working conditions, and not anticipating that. Oh man, what was I thinking of? The inflation costs of all the fuel, everything else for the buses, and so hopefully, like Mrs. Bartle said, this is a one-time deal and we can get that back up. Anybody else have any comments or questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias. Aye. Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Thank you, Kate. Good job. 6J, Transparency and Accountability Report, Mrs. Weincoop.
Hello. If you will bear with me for a moment as I get logged in real quick here. You guys get to see all my fun extensions that I have here as this loads up. My apologies, I should have had this up before. Okay, while it is loading, as required, we're going to cover several accountability things here that have been legislated for us to inform the public and keep people up to date. And the first one is going to be the benchmark assessment. We've reported on this for 2 years at this point. Just a reminder that we use NWEA. for 1st through 8th grade as our accountability report as required by the legislators. Kindergarten, we used local assessments because we had decided pre-COVID that we were not using NWA testing with our kindergartners and decided that COVID was not a good time to have them logging into a computer for the first time for an assessment. So you'll see a difference for that. Reminder that our goals are that we will see growth as measured in the NWA and our local assessment in both reading, ELA, and math. We took midterm assessments. The last time that I reported, we were looking at our fall benchmark and where they were at. We have since done a mid-year in January, which allowed us to gather more data and make tweaks on our MTSS process and the students that were being supported, and now we have our end-of-the-year data. The data you will see is going to report beginning to end of the year, but we do it 3 times a year. So for our kindergarten, we are seeing growth overall of 8.9% when it comes to math. And then the growth for DIBELS, that is a really large score, but that's because DIBELS is a different way of assessing them. So when we get into NWEA, just note that don't be panicked when it's 4 points and 9 points in kindergarten to DIBELS. It's just a totally different management of assessment. The important thing here is that our students are growing, which we expect them to do, both by being with us and with the interventions that we've had. One of the reports is we need to look at different student groups and make sure that we are showing growth in all of the groups, and then compare to see if there are certain groups that are being disproportionately impacted and are not growing. You will see that we do have growth in all areas when it comes to the fall to spring in reading. I do want to make a comment. The third line down, you'll see there was only a growth of 1, and that was in our virtual. But notice that our K-8 virtual students went from 63 students in the fall to 37 students in the spring at the end. So you have significantly less students, and especially at the middle school, those students that stayed virtual, we did find at the secondary that they were not participating in the same way for those who had stayed virtual. So good growth overall and an explanation for the virtual there. When we look at reading, you can see by grade level, and this is something that we had explained earlier, is that you expect to see less growth the older that they get. That's just by the very nature of learning acquisition. So we would expect to see the growth higher at the lower grades, which we do. Students grew, they did a good job. They're still below grade level according to the charts, but growth was more than what an average year is, and so we're showing gains as far as that goes. Same thing that you'll see for math. When we look again at the virtual, you will see a stagnant score, but that's moving from 63 to 37 students, so it's a different population, really, only half of the students. In all the other areas, you are seeing growth, and the good thing is that you're seeing proportional growth. So there is not a significance, other than that virtual with an explanation, you're not seeing that our subgroups have significantly less growth, and that is certainly something that we need to monitor. When we look by grade level, again, you're seeing the same trend. We had kind of a bump at 6th grade, which is good to see in that math. So again, not at the grade level by the end of the year, but the growth consistently throughout the year, so making progress with our students. So that is it as far as the assessment growth. We spent some time in February talking a lot about what our MTSS process is, what we did with that. So I'm not going to repeat that. If you have any questions for me, we'll handle that, but we've already done that. It's agile and adaptive based on data, and we continue to do that. So some other reporting was addressed in our budget tonight, and that has to do with our grant funds. When you dive more deeply in, you'll see that ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 are essentially done at this point. We're finishing up ESSER 3, and then our newest COVID-related grant funds are from 11T. 11T is a little bit different because these are state-directed, so even though they were federal funds, the state put the requirement and the parameters on how they were to be used. So they're very similar to ESSER 3. If you look at, we're looking at mitigation strategies, how we how we address the academic impact due to loss of instruction time. And then the remaining funds has some flexibility, and you will see that planning for next year. One of the things that we are doing is we can offset some personnel costs. It's very rare that grants let us do that, so we're grateful at this time that we've been given that flexibility because it certainly helps with our bottom line. The difference with 11T is that they have identified subgroups of students who have been disproportionately disadvantaged from COVID and from the loss of instructional time. And so if you look at the impacted subgroups, it's our low-income families, students of color, English learners, children with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, and our migratory students. So that is one limitation of these 11T funds. While they are significant, they can only address the needs of the students that fall into these subgroups. So we're doing some traditional programming, some more trying new things with them, but we also have to be proportional in how these funds are spent. So for instance, when we're offsetting staff, we can't pay for a full FTE of staff. We can only pay for the proportion of students that qualify under 11T. So just a little side note for that. Learning loss and wellness, we are looking at summer programming, traditional academics, but we were able to continue with the enrichment. If you remember last year, we were given special enrichment funds. This allowed us to continue doing those exciting enrichment activities, which we believe really help our students with the social emotional impact. I know that there are camps, music camp going on right now as one of our choices, so it's fantastic. It's an expensive camp to run, and we're grateful that we have between our at-risk and these funds that we're able to offer that for our students. One of the things that I'm really excited about is it's important that we start partnering with our families in a way that they are able to help us make some decisions. So there's been a lot of surveying, a lot of meetings. One thing that we did different this year was summer learning kits, which we've done for the last 2 years, is we partnered with Learning Gizmos, who has partnered with us during this whole time to get things to our families and in our students' hands. This year, it was only for those groups that qualified for 11T, but we were able to send them to Learning Gizmos. So instead of us saying, you're in second grade and you need literacy support, they get to go to Learning Gizmos and say, my kid's excited about this game, and it's going to help them with literacy, and they got to build their own kits. So that's going on right now. Just got an email today. Happy families, happy parents, was able to see some kids on Saturday. I stopped in and they were very excited to be building their own summer learning opportunities. So I was excited about that change that we've made this year, really being responsive to our families, saying we appreciate this, but family needs are very different. And for us to try and do one thing to meet the needs of everyone isn't the best way to meet their needs. Tomorrow we will be offering busing. So for our students who qualify, they were offered to be bused because we know that can be a limitation. For our students who are eligible for homeless support, we have gas cards, so we're trying to mitigate that. If traveling the 9 miles to Learning Gizmos, gas being what it is, trying to support them with that too. So I'm excited that that's a bit of a change and something that we're doing differently. 11T funds will be continued to be used for next year, and if there's funds remaining, for next summer also, so that we have another year in summer to continue these. This requires us to be evaluating the success of it. We will continue to do that through forums like this, where we're meeting with people, providing the opportunity to update what we're doing and give feedback through surveys, but also through our continuous improvement process, where we evaluate the impact that these are having.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What portion of our students fit into the subgroups?
2/3.
Thank you.
I am glad, and thank you. I should have mentioned that. So that is as our population changes, not just in numbers. That's another thing that when we're talking about data, I think is significantly important, is that the disproportionately impacted groups make up 2/3 of our students. That's significant. Thank you for asking that. The last thing that I wanted to update you, I know it seems like this was so long ago when we were making these return to learning plans, but we are required as part of the grant funds that we receive to be updating and informing people what our method of delivery of instruction is. And so we just do want to note that for the 22-23 school year, we are resetting many things to what we were doing at the start of the 1920 school year, and we are not a virtual or hybrid school, so we will be 100% in person for the 22-23 school year. There have always been options for virtual and hybrid classes offered through 21F, and for students who have some significant challenges that we've been able to partner with their families and their support making those recommendations, but we will not be offering a virtual option for our students for the 22-23 school year. And those are transparency and accounting reports for you. Are there any questions or feedback that you have for me?
Are we anticipating the at-risk numbers going up?
So at-risk will be higher than this because those disproportionately impact do not take into account students who are below grade level academically. So 68% of our students qualify for this without taking into account academic behind grade level. So I do anticipate that. The difficulty with that, Kurt, is similar to our title and grant funds. We get to count and use it for those students, but that's not how we're funded. It's a blended formula, and so we're going to get increases. We anticipate that that will be something that the legislature funds, but I don't know that we will be excited with their blend of compared to our number of students.
When they do the averages, or state averages, do they just use public schools, or are they using all?
I would have to go look up what the blends are because they're different, right? So for instance, Title I, which is not at risk, but it helps our at-risk students as a grant fund, that's based on our census. And we know that there were issues with census counting. And so we will be getting less title funds as that equalizes because we have less people in our county and we have less people who are below the poverty line. And since that's one of the main criteria that they then add to other things, that's going to impact us. We already know that we're getting less Title I support, and we anticipate that the at-risk being increased will do it, but we anticipate it being a wash, not a gain, while we have a significantly higher proportion of our students who are going to need those supports.
Can I have a motion to accept the report as presented?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Munger, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Any other questions? None, Madam, roll
I don't want to
call.
end that on a bad note. We have great plans. We are going to meet the needs of our students, whatever the challenges may be.
I know you will. Madam, roll call.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand. Here. Or Mrs. Hildebrand, sorry. Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Tobias. Aye. And Mrs. Munger. Aye.
Thank you. 6K, the Lakeshore High School Marching Band Camp Overnight Field Trip Request, Mrs. Weincoop.
Move to conditionally approve an overnight Lakeshore High School marching band field trip request for July 24th through the 30th of 2022.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Munger. Are there any questions? This is a trip they take every year?
Yes, and we're excited to be traveling again
Again?
overnight, and yes, we're very, very excited for these return of these trips.
Is it at the same location as they used to?
It's in Eagle Village, and honestly, I don't remember if that's the same
Well,
location.
they used to go to Saginaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they went to Saginaw Valley.
They're going to Eagle Village.
Any other questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Tobias.
Aye.
Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
And Mr. Ziegler.
Aye. 6L, Michigan High School Athletic Association Membership Resolution. Dr. DePonio.
Thank you. Move to approve the resolution, Lakeshore High School and Kennedy Middle School participate in the Michigan High School Athletic Association from August 1st, 2022 through July 31st, 2023.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Any questions? I now understand a little bit more about why one of our board members in the past used to always vote no to join this. It's an association, it's a good association, but I think they can do a better job of separating our schools so that these kids have a better chance to participate in playoffs and actually competing against schools their size. I should, put it to you that way. So with that being said, any other questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
And Mrs. Tobias.
Aye.
Okay, 7A, board commentary. Mrs. Tobias. Would you like to pass?
Oh, Lord. Complete sentences?
Do I have to? Yep, you're good.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of the Shore Nations for giving me the opportunity to be part of the Lakeshore School Board. I've been lucky enough to be part of this district since 1997, when my oldest child started in her Lakeshore journey in the preschool program. I'm not that old though. Followed by her twin brothers a few years later. My hope is to continue being part of this family for as long as I possibly can. Because it's a great place to be.
Thank you. Mrs. Munger.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came out to the Music by the Lake for Lakeshore Night. Thank you for all the alumni and future students and families that were there that supported us. Thank you to the administration, Shannon, the foundation, Mr. Dick and his wife were there, and maintenance, Mike, for all the help with setting up all the flags, all the signs, and handing out all the swag. We definitely make the best representation at the St. Clair Shores Activity Committee's concerts, so I'm proud to be a Shorean and appreciate all the work that was done to make it a great night for Lakeshore. I also just want to say have a wonderful summer, enjoy family and play games with each other and read books, and just enjoy the summer until we start again in school in the fall. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Oh, it's on now? Okay. Hi, this is my first meeting on the board, so this is exciting. Thanks to the presenters, I learned a lot, and it was really eye-opening, so thanks a lot for that. And I'm happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Welcome. Mrs. Bartle.
All right, I actually was going to have an evening without comment until I made a quick shop at a clothing store today, and the clerk commented that they're getting in their fall wardrobe line, and talked about back to school, and I'm like, it's June, it's June, we can't talk about back to school yet. So, like Liz said, enjoy the summer, do lots of family-oriented things, enjoy our city, and don't think about school shopping just yet.
Mrs. DeLong.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say congratulations to the teachers that made tenure. I want to give a very warm welcome to Amber and Wendy for joining the board. You guys are great additions. And since I'm a little under the weather, I'm going to keep it short, but I hope everybody, like Liz says, enjoy your summer, have some much-needed rest. We all need it and deserve it, and I'm excited for the school year, and I'm hoping that in the fall, it's going to look more like it has been in the past. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep mine short, too. Congratulations to the tenured teachers. Also want to thank Pete, Shelley, and Rochelle for all their hard work on the budget. I know it's not an easy thing to do, especially when money's going down. But you did a great job, and I want to thank you. Also, Mrs. Weinkoop, thank you for the presentation. I know you work endless hours also doing this, so I want to thank you for all your hard work. And it's been a very long year. I want to thank all the staff for all their hard work. It was a trying year, getting everybody back from COVID in a year and a half. And I hope you enjoy your summer, revitalize, and look forward to the 100th school year? 101.
No.
99.
It'll be 90, yeah. This graduating class coming up will be the 100th graduating class, because the first graduating class was a part of the first year. The following year will be our 100th year. So our first year in existence was 1922 to 1923. I'm sorry, 1923 to 1924 was our first year. So the centennial celebration will be 2023, 2024. However, this class will represent 100 classes that have graduated. We've done the math a million times just to make sure that we didn't miss it last year and we don't celebrate it 1 year too early. We got it.
I'm sure the festivities will be.
It'll be.
It's been
That's right.
conversational a lot.
I want to thank everybody for coming. Now I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mrs. Munger. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Dismissed.
Thank you, teacher.